right, good evening, friends, and welcome to the Dreary Midnight Podcast. My name is Lisa. My pronouns are she, they.
My name is Celeste. My pronouns are she, her.
And in the honor of roughly the season, we're going to talk about Ghosts of Gettysburg today. Ooh. Let's get into it. Intro music.
Intro music.
Also, happy almost birthday to Celeste.
Yeah, I'm going to turn 31
Woo!
in Thursday, and we're recording on Sunday.
Yeah.
So a few days.
Born on the 4th of July.
Woo, 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 woo. I'm the most patriotic baby.
All right. So, what do you already know about Gettysburg, the battle, the war, the ghosts, the whatever?
There was a Gettysburg. I know there was an address. I know that it was like a battle in the Civil War.
Yeah.
A battle place in the Civil War, and it's very haunted. But I don't know the specifics. And call me a bad history student. I'm just very bad at like dates, battles, and wars, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, Battle of Gettysburg was July 1st through 3rd of 1863.
That's why you said in the season.
Yeah.
July 1st is tomorrow.
Yeah, look at me learning dates and shit.
Oh my God. That's good. Because you're doing something that I could never.
What?
Remember dates. Remember dates.
All right. So the battle in general is also considered the bloodiest battle in the Civil War. It is not the bloodiest day in the Civil War. That's Antietam.
I was gonna say it was bloodiest, but I didn't want to be wrong.
Yeah. So Antietam is the bloodiest single day because there's about 22,000 people who died in Antietam.
That's so many.
But Gettysburg was 3 days long. Casualties about 51,000. For reference, in terms of
that's like double. That's more than double.
Yeah, but for reference for general casualties, how does that stack up with the other conflicts that the U.S. has been in? If you're ever in D.C. and go to the Vietnam Memorial, 16 years of combat, 58,000 names on the Vietnam Memorial, 36,000 for Korea. Civil War, learned this at Ford's Theater, but the Civil War was the bloodiest conflict that America has been a part of. Total casualties, American casualties, not total casualties, but total American casualties in the Civil War are greater than total American casualties for the first 200 years of America's existence combined. Including World War II.
Is it slightly biased because America was fighting America, so therefore
a little bit, yeah.
Only Americans died in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's you're getting to the first you're getting to 200 years, even if you have that at the first century or so, like that's a lot. And it is often considered a turning point in the Civil War. Up until that point, the Confederacy was starting to win or doing very, very well. Robert E. Lee had done well at the Battle of Chancellorsville against Joseph Hooker, and Joseph Hooker had lost basically because of some bad decisions. Hooker had like twice the amount of soldiers and twice the amount of energy, and Lee still won.
But because he didn't.
He made just like a couple of bad decisions and lost.
How far into the Civil War? How long had they been fighting in the Civil War? Like, how long had it been going on?
So this is July of 1863. So the Civil War is declared end of May of 61, so a little over 2 years.
Oh, wow. So the Confederates were winning for a good time.
For a good part of that. And Lee wanted to have a victory in the North and stop doing defensive battles all of the time.
Because they were fighting on Confederate soil.
Gettysburg is in Pennsylvania, which is like Maryland is considered a border state. Technically it was part of the U.S., but there was still slavery. And so Pennsylvania was the first Union territory, right? Not like technically Union, but favors Confederacy. It's like actually Union.
Yeah.
And
Philadelphia is, according to Mount Vernon, Philadelphia is where like the Washingtons they would take their slaves to Philadelphia and they'd let them like have a free day or whatever, where they like got to go around town, but they were still enslaved.
Well, And the other thing about Philadelphia is that they had a gradual abolition law. If you could establish residency for 6 months in Philadelphia, you're automatically considered a free person. And during the presidency, George Washington took everybody to New Jersey for about 2 weeks every 3 to 5 months to get around that law. And Oni Judge just didn't go to Jersey one time. And Washington spent like resources on resources on resources trying to get her back, and she's like basically like, fuck you.
As she should.
Official dreary midnight stance, slavery is wrong and terrible.
Slavery is bad, maybe.
But talking about people who are pro-slavery, Robert E. Lee, he wanted to have a victory in the North and stop doing exclusively defensive battles, so he pushes from Fredericksburg to southern Pennsylvania, where there's a lot more resources, a lot less chaos. And if he succeeded in making the push farther north, he also might be able to force some sort of end to the war, or at least start some negotiations in a pro-Confederacy way. And instead, after 3 days of fighting and around 51 confirmed dead on both sides, 51,000 confirmed dead on both sides, Lee is forced to retreat. It's the bloodiest battle during the Civil War. It is often also considered a turning point in the Civil War. Union General at that time, Hooker, was relieved of command, and command goes to Meade. And Lincoln is hoping that Meade is going to follow Lee back to Virginia and intercept them and force a surrender somewhere on the way. Relatively speaking, Gettysburg is quite close to Virginia, only about 90 miles from where we are. And Lee is commanding the armies of Northern Virginia. I grew up in a place called Arlington County, named after Robert E. Lee's Arlington estate.
I'm blanking. What state is Gettysburg in?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah. You have to go through that narrow part of Maryland, and it's in the bottom corner of. Yeah. And then Appomattox, where Lee eventually surrenders, is 184 miles south of where we are. So.
Well, Lee grew up here.
Yeah.
Because, his boyhood home is
nearby us. But he marries George Washington's step-great-granddaughter, and her actual grandpa had a lot of money and a lot of land, and so Arlington House is technically hers. I put in my notes, Lincoln is basically thinking, at Meade, you're in home territory, force a surrender, do the thing.
Do the thing.
Meade did not do the thing. And instead, the war goes on for another 2 years. There are some theories that the war could have ended here if Meade had caught up to Lee during the 9-day chase back down to the Potomac. But he didn't
catch up because he made bad choices, or because Lee had too many resources?
I think I didn't look into what happens after the battle about how Meade was or was not able to do it.
Do you think it was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B?
A little bit. I did get a book that I didn't get the chance to actually finish. It is called Race to the Potomac, Lee and Meade after Gettysburg, July 4th through 14th, 1863.
Like the answer.
By Gottfried, it looks like. So I have not been able to properly read that yet, but
if you want it answered, maybe go out
read that.
And read that.
I'll link it in the show notes. And Gettysburg as a battle was not necessarily chosen for its strategic point. It was more that was a spot where certain sides happened to collide. Henry Heth was leading some Confederate forces and was trying to seize supplies from Gettysburg, the town. And John Buford of the Union had cavalry in the area. Those are not the only commanders involved. Those are just the first troops to start shooting at each other. Day one is the hardest, 50,000 troops engaged and about 16,000 casualties. Over the course of the 3 days, there's...
And I want to just pause real quick and say, it's easy to get caught up in the numbers because it's a lot. Yeah. But these were not, I know the weapons they were using, these were not easy deaths. These were hard.
They're a lot.
They're bloody.
And
there's cannons.
And a lot of these folks are wearing wool.
Yeah. A lot of these folks are just farmers.
Yeah, farmers, fishers, candlestick makers. It's a lot of just people who went to bat for the resources they had, with the resources that they had. And I don't know the timeline necessarily of automatic weapons, but if they exist, they're very, very early at this point. So many times you're still doing, it takes you 30 seconds to a minute to get your next bullet in and fire the thing. So
So this is Devin talking about some sort of machinery at the Civil War.
I was just asked if there was a machine guns in the Civil War. I guess technically on your definition, no. There were Gatling guns, except the modern ones you might see in like an action movie or like on military equipment, modern military equipment. Those are all like run on like electric motors and stuff, while the ones in the Civil War were hand cranked.
Okay, and so what I had defined as a machine gun is anything that you're not reloading by hand every single time.
By that definition, yeah, if that's how you're defining the machine gun, yes.
Okay.
Early ones, sometimes early machine guns were even called coffee grinders because you had to turn this crank like an early coffee grinder.
Okay.
So, fun fact, you had to have strong arm muscles to slaughter hundreds of men.
Anyway, back to the show.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And, well, like I said, the things that freaks me out is the cannons, because that was literally just, it wasn't an explosive cannon. It was just a giant metal ball.
Yeah.
That plowed through.
Yep.
It's like, and then you either get stabbed or you get shot. And
yeah, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
Of those 51,000, of course, they're spread kind of around farmlands and fields and stuff. The Union troops create what's kind of called a fish hook formation. So if you think of, the curve of a fish hook, they're curved kind of around a major ridge, and then their defensive line is kind of around the ridge. There's a kind of a hilly, mountain, rocky area in the middle. They're curved around the outside, and then the Confederate troops are curved on the long edge around them. And
Lisa's doing like hand motions
as
they're talking.
And I'll try and include a link to a battle map. But if you're a Confederate soldier and you're trying to go like across the battlefield from one end of your line to the other end of your line, you're encountering a Union soldier and then a bunch of hills and rocks and shit, and then another Union soldier, and then your comrade on the other side. One of the central areas is called Little Round Top, which was the major area of defense. And in there's a lot of different things, but in there is also called Devil's Den, which comes up in a lot of the spooky stories a lot.
Well, with a name like Devil's Den, I would expect it to.
Yeah. So, we're here for Gettysburg hauntings. So let's get into the hauntings. So, out of the more than 51,000 casualties, only one is a civilian.
I didn't
which is impressive.
Any civilian deaths.
Well, so it's sort of adjacent to the town, and many of like the houses, the hotels, the whatever, are used as field hospitals, including buildings at Gettysburg College, which also comes up.
Have you been to Gettysburg?
I have not. I was talking to my parents this morning, and they said, yes, we definitely have been there on our trip to wherever. I cannot for the life of me remember getting out and seeing things. I do want to go, but we should go. Anyway, but there's only one civilian death during the entire 3 days because the battle is just outside of town. But Mary Virginia Wade, her house was being used as a field hospital, and a stray bullet goes through the window, through her corset, through the chest, and kills her instantly. And
it must have been through her heart.
Yeah, basically. The one mercy is that she dies right away.
The corset did not save her.
No. Surprisingly.
With how stiff they are, you would think it would.
I have heard some reports that it might have been it went through her back and it was a back lace corset. I don't know. I've seen
bullet
either.
Also is very fast.
Yeah.
And it's also just a ball of metal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad she died, but at least she died right away.
Yeah. The house that she was working at is called the Jenny Wade house now because people called her Jenny Wade. And Jenny, according to onlyinyourstate.com, Jenny, quote, is said to still roam the house along with several children. Oh. Visitors often hear loud bangs and the innocent voice of a young child and feel sudden rushes of cold air when on the second floor of the house. Others tell of feeling the arms of the little children holding onto their legs.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Listen, I work with children.
Yeah.
I can feel them tugging on me, tugging on my pants and my legs or whatever. If I turned around and there wasn't anybody there, I would shit my pants.
Right.
Also, I know it's a war or whatever. Why were they shooting into a hospital? Into a somebody's house?
Because the house was a field hospital.
Yeah, I know, but they're already dying. Just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay, wait. So that's the children that are haunting, but is Jenny haunting?
She's often seen around there as well. Sometimes a figure, sometimes other things as well. But
do you have any information about these children who apparently died?
I didn't want to look into the kids or the orphanage. Apparently, there's an orphanage nearby that's also super haunted, but that's not necessarily connected to the fighting around it. It's more of like one of the orphanage runners was terribly abusive. But speaking of hospital, Gettysburg College had also been established by that point, and a lot of the buildings, including Penn Hall, were used as field hospitals because there's lots of buildings,
a lot of space.
Yeah. And again, this is according to onlyinyourstate.com. The quote, the most terrifying of those stories dates back to the early 20th centuries. 2 college employees entered an elevator, pushed the button for the desired floor, and waited. But the elevator malfunctions, taking them straight to the basement. When the elevator doors opened, the women saw a bloody Civil War operating room with doctors working feverishly to save injured and dying soldiers. As the doctor walked towards them, the elevator began to move to another floor.
Oh my God.
The 2 employees, accompanied by a security guard, returned to the basement minutes later to find nothing.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Right?
Also, I would also shit my pants.
Yeah, right.
Okay. The chaos and blood that they must have seen just in those few seconds.
Yeah.
What was the elevator trying to do here?
Have you heard the whole theory about, like...
The elevator game thing?
Well, I've heard of the elevator game.
Yeah, you did a podcast on it.
I don't think I did elevator game.
It was
11 Miles. That's similar to the elevator game.
Oh, yeah.
But,
that one.
Yeah. And there's... again, it likely happened in Penn Hall, but because there have been reports of a lot of elevators being very, very weird. But elevators and staircases and doors are often considered liminal space, similar to crossroads, because there is just so much motion.
Passage.
Yeah, passage. And it seems, at least in this case, there was passage of time as well as passage of space.
And the doctor was walking towards them.
Yeah,
right?
Like
he saw them.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if he was, like, the amount of purpose he was walking with, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because if he was just walking towards them...
Passively?
Well, if he's walking towards them and making eye contact with one of them, then he's seeing a pair of people wearing pants just standing there, right? But if he's just walking and there happens to be a bed that's adjacent to where the elevator was in the 20th century,
in time.
Then if he's walking towards them versus walking towards that bed, it didn't really specify which one it was.
Yeah.
But
you know what's so trippy? The idea that maybe at some point when this was a hospital, a doctor looked up and saw
just 2 randoms.
People,
yeah.
And then started walking towards them, and then they disappeared.
Yeah.
And he'd
That's
probably
so
be thinking, like,
yeah,
I'm tired, and I need to keep working on these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I love the idea of cross-dimensional, like...
Yeah. That's worth an episode all on its own.
Honestly.
Yeah. And officially the ghost tours in Gettysburg are not allowed to go out onto the battlefields because there's a ton of stuff happening just in the city itself. But Fred of the pod, Sarah, who we also do ghost tours with, emailed me a little write-up of something she'd experienced when she had gone to Gettysburg years ago now. It's a very brief sort of thing. And so this is from friend of the pod, Sarah. Many years ago, I remember touring the battlefields at Gettysburg National Park with my family. Civil War had always been one of those points of interest for me. Being there is certainly an experience that I would like to do again. While walking around, I do recall being on one of the open battlefields and experiencing an odd sensation. One that made me feel as if I was a sitting duck, that I was clearly seen and wasn't safe. I did end up moving and the sensation passed. Given that all that transpired there, it's no surprise to feel the spirits of those still roaming the fields, tied to the place where they fell, fighting for a cause they believed in.
That's scary.
Yeah, that is scary. And that's such an interesting sensation, because she said she moved and it goes away.
Yeah.
But there is always, it's a very particular sensation when you know
someone's watching you.
When you know you're being watched. And there were snipers that I didn't
know that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a sniper shot that killed Jenny Wade.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a random shot.
Well, I think they were aiming somewhere, but of course it's Civil War era guns. Mm-hmm. The fact that it went over the battlefield through the window and into somebody's corset is sort of expected and yet not, right?
Yeah.
Probably aiming like at least 10 feet in either direction.
Yeah. Right? I'm sure the guns weren't exactly accurate either.
Yeah. Yeah. I have fired a mini ball a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and it does take a long time. It's hard to...
Okay, cool guy.
I was a Boy Scout, thank you. I remember at that particular... Because it was at Boy Scout camp. Main thing with Boy Scout camps is it's a little bit about the hiking, and then you go and you camp, and there's a cool thing to do at those specific camps. And so we went to the Civil War one. Shout out to Michael, who I'm still friends with on Facebook. And he basically said, yeah, if you're shooting a lot of these and you hit the broadside of a barn, you've got really good aim. So we don't know for sure what that sniper is aiming at. Presumably they had slightly better guns than, or slightly more accurate guns than anybody else did, but you know. So speaking of... So
they had snipers, so you think maybe Sarah was standing where a sniper could have...
Could be. At Sarah.
At Sarah, do you think you were standing in the same place as somebody who died?
And follow up, were you in the Devil's Den area? Because that's apparently hella haunted. But speaking of people who have had weird experiences on the battlefield, this is from Reddit r/paranormal encounters. Someone says, this was a few years ago when it happened, and the details may not be 100% accurate to that day because, well, I wasn't there. My mom, because it's their mom's Gettysburg ghost encounter. My mom was hanging out with my now stepdad and a few friends around the Gettysburg, Pennsylvania area. It was around 2 a.m. on a weekday. Don't know what mom and stepdad were doing at 2 a.m. on a weekday, but okay. And they were bored, so they went...
just hanging out.
Quote unquote hanging out. So they went to Gettysburg even though they weren't allowed to, which I think lends to quote unquote hanging out.
Yeah, quote unquote hanging out.
They were walking around the triangle field and just hanging out.
Sorry, did you say 2 a.m.?
Yeah.
I thought it was 2 p.m. I was like, they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, 2 a.m. makes it a little bit weirder. So 2 a.m., they're on the triangle field, which is kind of close to Devil's Den, I think. Then they watched as a man walked through the tree line and just through the triangle field. The man was wearing a dark, presumably blue uniform with bags on his back. Blue is Union.
Yeah.
The man just walked through the field and onto the road right next to the field. He then would disappear while walking in the little round top direction. So the main hill. So not close to Devil's Den, never mind. Now, I'm a Gettysburg nerd, this person says, and I believe he was a part of the 3rd Maine Regiment. The direction they described he walked in lines up with a memorial for where the 3rd of Maine was positioned. This had a sort of logical explanation for it being a person fooling around with them. But why? This was a random weekday at 2 a.m., and for someone to come in on the same day, same time, and same place as them is sort of weird.
Yeah, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to dress up in a Civil War costume and scare some people. It was a... Like, it's 2 a.m. You're not going to go scare some people.
Yeah.
You don't even know if people are there.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Someone comments on it and says, I was there with my son and a friend in 2018. Got there around 11 p.m. and walked through most of it and got some cool pics of what we say looks like soldiers walking down Wheat Ridge Road. This was right at 3 a.m. in the morning, and out of nowhere, all 3 of us could hear drums in the distance.
Oh no. I don't like that. I don't like that on the impending something happening.
Yes.
Like, I'd rather just see it and then be like, whoa, that's weird.
Yeah.
But, like, to hear it and to know that something's coming.
Yeah. Another comment. I knew someone who had accompanied his ghost hunting son to Gettysburg as a bit of a skeptic. I don't remember what part they were in, but they sat silently for a long time with a tape recorder running. When they played the tape later, they could hear a young-sounding man talking about how much pain he was in.
Oh. That's sad.
Yeah. And a lot of that is very common, or just sort of like, it's not giant overt things. It's just like, it's a blip that could almost be something, or a little bit ominous, but not like...
I think those are more believable than the ones that are like, and then this ghost popped out right in front of me and said, hi, I'm a ghost. Or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, your mind could be playing tricks on you, or it could be something.
Yeah.
I feel like...
Or like a little bit of both. Or your mind is hamming up what you are seeing a thing, but you're attributing it incorrectly. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that makes it less believable, but it's like, I feel like it's also the amount of people that have these feelings. Like, if it's just like a one-time thing and nobody's, like, there's no history of haunting, and like, you could easily be like, okay, that's weird. That's just in my brain.
Yeah.
But the fact...
Hashtag just 2 a.m. things.
Multiple people saying similar stories is kind of...
Yeah. So there's another interesting thing in the Devil's Den area.
Yes.
This is from Ghosts of Gettysburg, Spirits, Apparitions, and Haunted Places on the Battlefield. I'll be paraphrasing from this one. So photography is in its infancy at the start of the Civil War.
Yes.
And... of course, in the Devil's Den area, nowadays, everyone's got the camera phones, right? So in Jack McLaughlin's book, Gettysburg, The Long Encampment, published the year of the 100th anniversary of the battle, there was a photograph taken from Devil's Den by Gettysburg photographer Walt Lane. It shows the rock-strewn west slope of Little Round Top. The people who view the black and white photo are split about half and half as to whether they see outlined to perfection the ghostly image of a face of a soldier wearing a Civil War style kepi, which is kind of hat.
Oh.
And they did not include the photo here.
Great.
Interestingly, 1970s, a young woman was walking around the national park, as one does.
I mean, it's a national park.
Yeah. And she asks one of the rangers, are there any ghosts here at Gettysburg?
Yeah.
And officially speaking, I don't know if park rangers are allowed to say yes, no, or maybe. And so park ranger says no.
Okay.
No. Why? And so apparently the woman who had asked had apparently been in the Devil's Den area.
Oh.
Felt like she she'd gotten turned around in the maze of rocks, says Mark Nesbitt in Ghosts of Gettysburg. But the light was right, and so she got out of her car to take a photo. Her eye was up to the camera when she said she felt a presence. Lowering the camera, she saw a man standing right next to her. He looks at her and said, "What you're looking for is over there," and pointed behind her. She turned her head to see what he was pointing at, and when she turned back, he was gone. A ranger asks, "What does he look like?" She says, "Well, he looks sort of like a hippie. He's got long hair, ratted clothes, barefoot, big floppy hat."
Oh.
And then a month or so later, same ranger, same station, different person says, "Are there any ghosts in the Devil's Den area?" And the park ranger is like, "Why?" And the guy says he's an amateur photographer about a month prior. So timeline-wise, this guy and the other lady had been there at about the same time.
Okay.
Had gotten out of his car and set up his camera to take a picture of a barren rock as the sunlight hit it dramatically. When he got home to develop the photo, because it's the 70s, he saw a man standing on the rock, which to his naked eye had been devoid of life.
Oh my God.
2 weeks later, he returned to Gettysburg. So 2 weeks after this lady was there, and 2 weeks before speaking to the ranger about it, set his camera up at the same spot about the same time of day, and exposed an entire roll of the barren rock. So just taking like 20-30 photos of the same thing.
Nothing.
When he got home and developed the roll, the left half of each exposure was perfect, but the right half, where the guy had appeared before, was entirely blurred.
That's terrifying. Oh my God, that's terrifying.
So now he said he's back to take another roll to make sure that he had not inadvertently ruined the first roll in trying to develop it. And
yeah, because it's like, if they're all the same, then maybe that's just how it is.
Yeah, maybe he got a dud roll. Maybe it's a whole thing. For y'all who are Gen Z and Gen Alpha, we did at one point have to have a physical copy of everything. The ranger apparently asks, do you still have that very first photo where like you were looking and there was nobody there and there was a photo and somebody's there?
Yeah.
The guy says, yeah. And he's like, and the ranger says, okay, what did the guy look like? He's like, sort of like a hippie, barefoot, long hair, floppy hat.
Oh, I knew it was coming, but
Yep.
still. Who is this guy? Do we have a theory? Was he part of the Civil War, or was he just a guy?
So, one of the farthest regiments in the furthest traveled regiments at the Battle of Gettysburg are from Texas.
Oh.
And if you're walking from Texas, takes a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
You don't easily have a change of clothes or access to a haircut or new shoes. And in the Devil's Den area was one of the snipers, I think. Saw in one of the ghost books, and I cannot for the life of me remember exactly what I saw, which one I saw it in. But apparently in going around to take photos after the battle, there's a body of a Texan sniper laying up in a certain area in Devil's Den area. But having respect for the dead in getting the perfect spot wasn't as much of a thing in 1863, I guess. Yeah. And so to get the
you're also surrounded by so many dead.
Yeah, I mean, given that, it's almost surprising that it's just this guy in
seriously,
in that little area. But the photographer grabs his buddy, moves the body of the sniper about 40, 50 feet, and gets a slightly different and slightly better photo. And so there are theories that the hippie-looking guy is the soul of the Texas sniper. Celeste is looking absolutely gobsmacked.
That's why he's so into photographs.
Yeah.
That's so... Oh, yeah. It's all connected.
It's all connected.
That's so creepy. Also, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the... of Matthew's story.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Go back to the real spooky stories that was posted about a year ago now. But Fred and Calling Matthew knew someone who had a similar experience at a Civil War area.
Taking a photo of
but that was a Civil War battlefield, I think.
It was in Tennessee.
Tennessee, I thought it was Carolina. Anyway, go back and listen to that particular episode, and you'll find out which one it is. But one...
Oh, that's so creepy. And we don't even know his name.
No. Yeah.
Damn.
But we're going to leave you on one more.
Oh, I don't know if anything can top that one.
This one is a wild one.
Oh, boy. All right.
So this is paraphrased from Nancy Roberts' Civil War Ghost Stories and Legends.
Okay.
She'd written it up as a mystic power at Gettysburg. So one of the main divisions under Colonel Joshua Chamberlain and Adelbert Ames, which... What a name. So they were marching north from Maryland to get to Pennsylvania because they were chasing Lee. They found out in Hanover that Lee was near or approaching Gettysburg, which is 12 miles west of Hanover where they were. And apparently some telegraph lines had been cut between Gettysburg and Washington, so they're probably some of the closest confirmed Union troops in the area. So they start marching. Gettysburg apparently is in the center of a lot of roads, and nearby was also like a train tracks that had started to be carved but had not successfully been done yet. Either way, center of a lot of things. They come to a fork in a road because there's a lot of roads, and so they're not sure which one to take because they're from Maine and not Pennsylvania. And according to as a direct quote from Nancy, quote, "Suddenly the clouds parted and the moon shone down upon a horseman wearing a bright coat and tricorn hat. Mounted on a magnificent pale horse, he cantered down one of the roads branching off before them. Turning slightly towards them, he waved them to follow," end quote. Chamberlain apparently thinks it's General McClellan and figures, okay, McClellan's gotten command, is in the area, let's follow him. And everyone is like, hooray, it's McClellan. We have somebody in greater power, huzzah. Turns out they're being led to one of the more strategic points on the battlefield. In the meantime, Governor K. Warren, governor, his name and not his title.
Wait, okay.
Governor K. Warren.
Those parents really had high hopes for him.
Yeah. He's a Union general. He's on Little Round Top, so he's trying to protect the hill. And he has this idea to shoot a round of artillery at the tree line, which is a little bit too far for cannons to actually cause harm, but it still does what he means it to do. He knows the Confederacy are somewhere in the tree line somewhere. All of the noise still makes all the soldiers in the tree line jump. And so he sees a couple heads pop off and a couple of glints off of bayonets and stuff. And so, okay, well, they're over there.
Yeah.
Like in this area or whatever. Because he knows it's not necessarily going to hit. It might hit a couple, but, it's more about, the glint of the bayonet gives away the position. And Chamberlain's men were in an ideal position to respond to where the Confederates were. As they approach Little Round Top, they're way outnumbered. Chamberlain's men are. And they only had about 60 rounds per person. They still have orders to hold that part of Little Round Top, but within 2 hours they're out of ammo. So they start stripping bodies for ammunition, because what else are you going to do? And then things are about to ramp up again, and they hear someone saying, "Fix bayonets and charge." Looks like the same guy in the tricorn hat from earlier. In both of those situations, tricorn hats are not usually associated with the Civil War. They're associated with the Revolutionary War. And apparently a really tall guy, about 6'2".
Oh.
Looked like Washington.
Stop it.
Apparently people thought it was Washington.
Okay. When you said it first, I was like, that is a ghost.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
who
it's
that guy is,
the
but
white hat,
ghost.
it's the whatever, it's the white horse.
The white horse.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a ghost. It's a ghost.
Spooky.
But I didn't know that it was George Washington's ghost.
Yeah. But
well, okay, so then whose side was he on? He was
Union. Yeah.
Okay.
All
right, George.
So
can't forgive the slavery.
Yeah.
That's ironic.
Yeah, right? Chamberlain was apparently interviewed later, like close to death, and he said that it was likely a rumor, but a useful one for morale.
Oh.
And that's all I have for the Ghosts of Gettysburg.
Jeez.
And I didn't do everything. Mark Nesbitt has like 10 books on Ghosts of Gettysburg.
We could probably do a part 2 for this.
We could, yeah. And then part 3 to 5
if all
is
the stories are like this, then we could definitely do a part 2.
Yeah. All right. And if you want a part 2,
that was so
support
good.
us on Patreon.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was so good.
Support us on Patreon.
We haven't recorded in months.
Yeah,
so
we haven't properly recorded in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, because we did a whole bunch of bulk recording.
Yeah, and so this is our first one back in person.
Good one to come back to. Lisa,
welcome
you did
back.
fantastic.
Thanks. And support us on Patreon so we can keep doing the thing.
Yes.
Patreon.com/drearymidnights. You want to get in touch with the show, send us an email. drearymidnightpodcast@gmail.com. And follow us on Instagram at drearymidnightpod. With all that said, have you been to Gettysburg? Let us know.
Would you like to? After hearing
Would you like
these?
to? Have you been to Devil's Den? Also, don't linger in Devil's Den, or you'll be a sitting duck. And safe travels home on this dreary midnight. Good night.
Good night.